What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Benconnected. Absolutely stoked that you're here. Again, appreciate all the love, support, and everything else from y'all. Lately we've been, chalking up with a lot of cool content. We're getting you guys a lot of cool different interviews from a ton of different walks of life. So I appreciate you guys tuning in each week. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts now, Spotify, YouTube, and obviously our Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, where you can see our exclusive content. Super excited for all of our partners and super grateful for them. Dunk Cookies out in Saratoga Springs, Mosquito Meat Market, and Lodge 33, best hats in the game, man. So appreciate all of them, appreciate the love, and Noble Locksmith as well. Noble Locksmith Salt Lake. Appreciate those guys. If you ever get locked out of your car, they got you. They'll make sure you're taken care of. But anyway, today's episode is absolutely sweet. I'm super excited to introduce the guest today. You know me, I'm a big sports guy. Been around sports my whole life. Love sports, but I also love good human beings and good people beyond just the game of whether it's basketball, football, soccer, track, whatever it is. So today our guest is Harrison Taggart from the BYU football team, coming off an unbelievable season and absolute stud and absolute dog on the field, but even a better human. So I hope today on this episode you're going to get to know him and see a different light of Harrison. So welcome to the show, Harrison.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Super excited.
Absolutely, bro. Well, I mean, let's just let's get right into it. So you're from Utah, grew up in Utah. You went to Corner Canyon.
Yep.
What was that like? How was going through the ranks of football, and what got you to the collegiate level?
So I grew up in Draper. I've got three younger siblings. Then I went to Corner. My dad played football, and then that's how it got me playing football.
Yeah,
Did like the little pop corner can thing all the way up, and then get to Corner, and Coach Care gets there, and
unreal. If you don't know who Coach Cares, you should Google it. You know who he is. He's legit.
yeah, his resume is top
Unreal.
tier. And I didn't really know what I was getting myself into until you get a text that, hey, 6 a.m. workouts your freshman year. I'm like, hey, Dad, like, can you drive me at 6 a.m. to football? He's like, what are you talking about? And so, yeah, every single morning in the off season, the whole team's there, 6 a.m.,
Wow.
pounding weights and sprinting and doing all that stuff. Go to school, and then off seasons, either track or wrestling after school.
Yeah.
So I did track,
Okay.
was a sprinter, and then, yeah,
That's
then
sweet,
football
man.
during the football season, obviously.
I mean, freaking crazy. I think a lot of people, and good shout out to my boy Harrison, because I mean, there's a lot of the hate towards Corner Canyon because they're dominant in pretty much every aspect, right? Like they dominate in basketball, football, they dominate, and a lot of people were like, oh, it's recruiting and this and that. So it's like, at the end of the day, man, it's the work that people put in. You know what I mean? Like a
Yeah,
lot of schools aren't doing the 6 a.m. at a level of every kid's there. You know what I mean? There's
yeah.
schools that do it, and there's guys that show up, and there's like the 5, 10, 20 guys
You'll
maybe.
get a handful of guys.
Right.
Yeah,
But you're not getting a full team buy-in
yeah,
where it's like when you got schools like Corner Canyon where that is the establishment. Like, you look back at like Lone Peak for basketball with Quincy Lewis. I mean,
yeah,
everyone knew why they were good is because they were bought into the program, right?
yeah.
So when you were a freshman, how was that? Were you playing up? Were you playing freshman ball? How was that experience going into high school?
So I was playing softball with my boys. And then a game in, I was up playing JV. I was actually playing receiver.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it started as a receiver.
Started as a receiver. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Everybody they're like, I want to make the flashy plays. I want to do
Yes.
this. I want to do this. So, yeah, I started at receiver. I played receiver my freshman year, my sophomore year, and
I love it.
I was not good.
Hey, you know, honestly though, like that's kind of like the fun part is like when you kind of like just doing it, and it's
Yeah.
just you're out there and there's not, obviously now what you're doing is high level and things like that, and so you got to be good.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're playing high school and you're just can be an athlete and you're just kind of having fun with it and you're able to do stuff. I think that's one of the funnest times of life and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I joke around with my wife all the time. I'm like, man, like we're gonna sit down our kid and say, listen, I know you're probably gonna get made fun of. I know you're probably gonna get told that you're a loser, but like, I'm telling you right now, everyone wants to be a receiver. Everyone wants to be a quarterback. You're gonna be the kicker. and I'm gonna
Yeah.
teach them how to be a kicker. So that way, longevity, they're gonna be solid. And I told them they're gonna get made fun of. Like they're probably gonna get made fun of. But shout out to my kicker people. Matt Gay's one of my homies, and you know. I mean, kickers, man, they have a good life and good career,
A
and
great career,
they
yeah.
they don't gotta get hit. They don't.
Unless you're
No.
missing, then
Yeah,
it's oh
unless you miss, then it's your fault,
yeah,
right?
that's a little rough.
I mean, you look at like Will, bro. Will's like a hero now after hitting that field goal versus Utah.
Oh,
Like, I
you've seen
mean,
that videos where he was crowd surfing
you
after
crowd
the game?
surfing after the game as a kicker, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you don't do that. On the flip side, you've seen the other side of it where people miss and it's not that kind of treatment. So, yeah, I told my wife that. She's like, "What if he likes chess?" I was like, "I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's
Yeah.
all gonna be good." So, but man, okay. So you're playing receiver. You're not dominating as a receiver. When did it kind of change where you went more defensive side, or was that more at the college level, or how did that transition?
So I played varsity receiver my sophomore year.
Okay.
And then going to my junior year, like I had conversations like this is just not for me. I don't know
Right.
if this is my thing. And then my dad and my coaches were like, "Why don't we switch to defense? Like, what do you think?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "I'll give it a shot. Like, what do I have to lose?" So I switched to defense. Casey Satera, he's now the head coach at Brighton.
Yeah.
He was my DC at the time. He was like, "Yeah, let's put you on defense." So I went and played defense. It was so fun. Lit it up on defense.
Nothing's better on defense than just like going to light someone up.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like it's like magical.
he has nowhere else to go besides straight, and you just have
Right.
a free shot on him. It's the best thing ever. So
Did you start as a linebacker, or were you kind of like hybrid? Where were you at?
I
like, when
started
you-
as an outside backer. So I was like a
Okay.
hybrid safety linebacker.
which is super fun in high school.
So fun. That was 60 pounds ago. So
Yeah, which you're just flying around the field and just lighting people up.
yeah, just
So what? So, okay. So then you go into that. How was that recruiting process your junior year? Obviously, when you made the switch, were you the guy that was getting all these offers? Were you more of the low key and had to go that route? What was that like? Obviously, you committed to Oregon out of high school, so I would assume you had a lot of different looks and different
Yeah.
opportunities. But how did that happen?
So I really went in with the mindset like, okay, I just want to get on the field. Like,
Right.
I'm switching defense, can't really expect anything. And then I started. And then I started to blow up. I started to have a lot of fun. I was getting 10, 12, 15 tackles a game.
Big time.
Yeah, like just lighting it up all over the field. And then all of a sudden you're down the off season down in Florida and it's like, hey, these guys want to see you. My first offer was Penn,
Oh, wow.
a little Ivy League. But then I'm on campus of FAU and it's like, hey, like
Yeah.
this guy's
who's
legit.
guy?
Yeah. So I got
Yeah.
offered by Florida Atlantic. That was my first offer. And then next thing I know is I'm on the phone with Jed Fish down at Arizona. He's now at Washington now. And he's like, hey, man, like we liked what you did. We want to offer you. So got offered by Arizona. And then all of a sudden, like all these offers blowed in. I ended up with 30 offers by the time I graduated.
Okay, so yeah, every kid has kind of a different experience as far as recruiting and how it goes, and so you start getting these offers. Was that more of like a motivational thing where you're like, okay, now I'm at this level, I gotta keep going, or is it kind of like, shoot, I'm good now, I gotta just choose one? Like, how was that process for you?
Dude, it turned into a total motivational, like, prove myself thing. It kind of lit a spark underneath me to see, like, okay, let's see how big I can go. Let's see what we can do from here.
So sweet.
Yeah. So that's just kind of how it turned out for me.
So what was that like when did you do a top five? Were you clear cut to Oregon? What got you to the Oregon? You know what I mean?
So Oregon, everybody's dream school when you're
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
No,
Nike
for sure.
U. They've got all those things going for them.
Uniforms are tough. Like,
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Facilities are tough. Uniforms are tough. Stadium's so cool. They've got Marcus Mariota, who everybody's like, Mark, and he wins the Heisman. And it's like, oh my gosh, Oregon. You know what I mean?
Right.
I remember playing against Noah Sewell in high school, specifically in 7-on-7. We weren't playing with pads at 7-on-7. My homie catches a little hitch, and I remember him just killing him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, from then on, I was like, Oregon, Oregon, Oregon. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was fighting for that offer. Got offered by Mario Cristobal.
Okay.
And then he flies. So the different story. He flies out, right?
Yeah.
And he flies out with the defensive coordinator, the position coach, the defensive line coach, and they're at my house for a in-home dinner for for a visit.
Right.
And there's a bunch of talk like, hey, is he staying? Is he leaving? There was that whole thing.
Yep.
But he was at my house, so I'm like, oh, like I'm gonna sign this week. He's at my house.
Yeah.
He's not going anywhere.
You're like, I'm ready to go.
My dad's like, are you going anywhere? Pulls him aside. He's like, I wouldn't leave for the world.
Yeah.
Later that night, wake up the next morning, Cristobal's at Miami.
Yep.
He took a flight from Salt Lake from my house to Miami. I was the last stop.
Oh, wow.
And so I kind of delayed the post on Twitter. He didn't post that, but I delayed my post on Twitter and said, grateful for the in-home visit.
Right.
I posted that probably 4 days later, and it blew up. It had like millions of views. Cristobal's not leaving. Cristobal's not leaving. He's literally at Recruit's house.
Yeah.
But I did that 4 days later.
Right.
So he's already in Miami.
Yeah, so he's already there.
Yeah. So people had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, what a whirlwind of like an events, right? Like, I mean,
Crazy.
You're like talking to this, ready to be like, yeah, I'm all in, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, let's go, let's get you here.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yo, I gotta catch my flight to Miami.
Crazy.
Wild.
Yeah.
So okay, so you did that deter kind of?
So I took a step back. I still ultimately stayed committed to Oregon, but I took a step back. And
Right.
my top 5 before that was UCLA, Arizona, Utah, SC, and Oregon.
Oh wow. Big
Um,
time schools, big time defensive programs.
yeah. So I stayed committed to Oregon. I took a step back. While I took a step back, I kind of stayed away from those other 4 schools, and I reopened and I talked to Clemson and Oklahoma.
Okay.
So it really came to Clemson, Oklahoma, and Oregon.
Really?
Stayed committed with Oregon. They got Dan Lanning from Georgia, who's coming off a national championship.
Right. Unbelievable coach and what he did and what he does at Oregon as far as like what he's kind of established. So okay, so you get to Oregon. So how was that transition from college to or high school to college?
Oh, it was a lot.
Because a lot of people, I think we can touch on this a little bit, where a lot of kids, especially, so I coach basketball right now, and a lot of kids just think like social media is a blessing and a curse, right? It's like
100%.
social media is cool and it can help you in a lot of ways, but it's kind of a curse because it gives a false reality of what it's like, as
Yeah,
far as
totally.
like, you got to go in there and grind. You got to, even if you're a 4-star, you're a 5-star, like you have to go in and you're not going against the kids in just your community anymore. You're
Yeah.
not going against kids just in the state anymore. You're going against kids across the globe, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you're playing against, instead of having one to, obviously at a corner canyon, you have a lot more guys that make it to the collegiate level than, your normal school. And so you have maybe, 15 guys that go, dude, you're going to another team that has 100 dudes that were the best of the best at their schools.
Yeah.
So you're talking like at a different, and at a level of Oregon. Like it's not, I won't say names of other schools. It's not like a smaller school. It's the juggernaut of juggernauts.
You
right?
have these guys coming from the All-American game. You have
Right.
these guys coming from 5-star to their name. You know what I mean?
Yes. So what was that like? You get to Oregon, you're on campus, you're just this kid from Draper, and you're just at Oregon, and you're just like, I mean, it had to be surreal, right? Like it's like I'm here at Oregon.
Yeah, like I said, like it was my dream growing up. You get to Oregon and it's like, holy cow, like I'm with this dude. I'm with this dude. Like
Right.
literally like celebrities, quote unquote celebrities. What is a celebrity? But
Yeah.
these people that are walking around, you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm training with this guy. I'm training with this guy. I'm training in this facility. So yeah, it was surreal. And for the most part, it's what I thought it was. Like you have all the facilities, you have the uniforms, you have Nike U. Like
Yeah.
freaking Tinker Hatfield and Phil Knight are walking around our practices.
Just
And
hanging
you're
out.
dapping up Phil Knight on the sideline when you make a play. It's like crazy.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, see, I like to think like that's how it's like when I walk around BYU practices. It's like that, but it's not. Like,
I'll
no,
dap
it's
you
not.
up.
Hey, I got you. We're gonna dab up and be like, yeah, I dabbed up Benconnected. It's tough, but I mean, how cool though? Like as a little kid, you're just you don't have that dream, in youth league and little league, and you grow up, and now you're here at that point.
Yeah.
But it's it's a different grind, and it's a different type of style, and it's a different thing that you have to go through. And so what was that like, where you obviously were at Oregon, you ended up in the portal, and then how did that go? Like, you know what I mean? Like how was that transition?
Yeah. So grinding at Oregon, right? If anybody asks you, I'm a grinder. Like I'll put my head down, blue nose guy. Like I'll just grind away.
Absolutely.
So I was doing that. I appeared in 3 or 4 games up at Oregon
Okay.
my freshman year, ultimately redshirted. And I had great mentors in front of me. I had Jeff Bossa, who just completed his combine. I had Noah Sewell. I had
Noah's a
Leduc.
dog.
I had Keith. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I've got these amazing linebackers in front of me. And I was excited. I was super excited to play at Oregon. Ultimately, there was not the stability in the coaching at my position, at least,
Right.
that I was hoping for. Um,
Which is a big difference. Like that's a big deal. Like
it's a
to
huge
like
deal.
you can I mean, obviously you commit to a school and you commit to an organization, but you also commit to coaches. You know what I mean? That are
Yeah,
going to be there every day with you in the grind.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So
So I had a bunch of different position coaches, and your coach comes in, they have their guys. You know what I mean? They're going to bring
yep.
in their guys from a different school. They're going to be searching. So it just didn't feel right. Prayed about it. It wasn't right.
Right.
Um, so I hit the portal. I had a number of schools reach out. I had schools from Tennessee to Arizona State.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you had
Yeah.
you could go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like
So yeah, but BYU Kalani is the definition of stability.
absolutely.
You know?
One of the purest human beings I've ever been around. Like I've been around a lot of cool people, and Kalani is one of the purest dudes that I've ever met.
Yeah.
Like as far as like who he is as a coach and things like that, he is who he is.
Yeah.
But
So I had a little bit of a grudge. I wasn't offered by BYU in high school. Out of
okay,
high school. Um,
okay, so you don't talk to any coaches at BYU, but now you're talking to them obviously in the portal, but you're kind of a little like, man, they didn't offer me, so it's a little weird.
yeah.
But you obviously felt right about it and ended up at BYU.
Yeah, I went on my visit, had great meetings, loved the culture, loved everything about it, and really like, don't get me wrong, I loved all the coaches at Oregon. I have learned so many things from Tosh Lapoy, Dan Lanning, like
Yep.
amazing coaches. Couldn't ask for better. But just wasn't the fit for me, and I was looking for stability. BYU was the definition of stability for me, and I found a lot more things that I loved than just the stability at BYU. I love BYU, you know.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So ultimately, I made the decision. Weird timing. My sister was able to make the decision too, and now we're both at BYU together, which is kind of cool.
Because she was at Oregon too, right?
She was just coming out of high school.
Or she was coming out of high school, but I had offers to Oregon, right?
She had offers to places in LA, and then basically every single school in Utah.
So cool.
So
So now you're both at BYU, rocking out at BYU. I mean, what has that been like? Obviously, it's been a fun time for BYU football.
yeah,
There was a drought a little bit. Not a little bit. There was a drought.
Eh,
There was a big drought for BYU
yeah,
football, and I mean, there's been a lot of great dudes that have came through in the recent years. I mean, that COVID year was crazy.
yeah,
That was awesome and blasting teams and stuff like that. And then, it kind of got a little rocky and stuff like that. And you get a Jay Hill who could be a head coach anywhere. I mean, Jay Hill is unbelievable as far as kind of who he is, and his staff on the defensive side has, I mean, been to some degree, there's a lot of people that say, a lot of the games last year, especially were defensively won. You know what I mean? Where defense saved a lot of heartache for fans and things like that just because of who they are and how they played, and it was everybody. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
obviously, offense did their thing too, and offense has a lot of great talent on that side of the field, but defense has been the kind of vocal point, which traditionally hasn't been necessarily a thing. Like it's always been like Utah has the greatest defense ever, and
BYU's got the offense.
BYU
Yeah,
has this offense, but like it's kind of like, wait, BYU's putting it together, and they're getting guys, they're getting the right guys. You guys have an unbelievable linebacker room, especially last year. I mean, what is that like now? Now you've obviously been mentored. You've seen those types of dudes at Oregon. You come to BYU. You're
yeah.
a workhorse. What did you bring to BYU that you were like, okay, like I got to do this when I'm here?
Yeah, so I came to BYU, right, with another loaded linebacker. And we've got Ben Bywater, we've got Max Tooley,
Yep.
AJ Vong Pachong, right? We've got these dudes.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, I got to step up. I wanted to compete with the dudes.
Yep.
So I get on that level. I try to compete with the guys that are in front of me. Um, Awful. I hate talking about it, but Ben goes down against
Yep.
Kansas. You know what I mean? And then they're like,
Yep.
Taggart, you're in. So I go in against Kansas. That was my
That was your coming out party.
my coming out party. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a little like everybody hears about Jalen Daniels. Like this guy is a freak.
Yes.
You know. So yeah, went out there, let it all on the line, and then comes the new year, and we were coming off of that losing season,
Yeah.
bad season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wanted to turn around. That was awful. That was embarrassing. I've never had a losing season in my life. Never have.
Right.
Um,
Especially coming from corner.
coming from corner, coming from Oregon.
Right.
I've never
especially at
had a
that
losing
level of
season.
like losing on that platform
Yeah,
is brutal.
it was bad. So yeah, next is the new year, this last year, which was a lot of fun. There were tons of ups, but downs too. I
Right.
mean, we were two balls away from competing for a national championship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Which is super just one of those stings that just like is there. You know what I mean? Like everyone's celebrating obviously the wonderful year that you had. And obviously you
exactly.
can enjoy it, like you enjoy the process and stuff, but it's like, yeah, like a couple plays go another way. I mean,
Where it's totally
it's
different
a
season.
total different season,
Yeah.
which is even crazier. So I mean, obviously that has to bring some extra motivation because there was a lot of talk. I mean, you probably could have left in the portal too this year after a wonderful year that you had. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so you buy in, you stay here. I mean, what was that like to use that as motivation for this upcoming season?
I've been in the winter workouts, I've been harping on it like this close. Like, let's not compete for an Alamo Bowl. Let's compete for this national championship. Like,
Right.
let's do this. And really, we've got our whole entire offense is coming back. We've
Yep.
got all of our linebacker core coming back. Like, it's a little bit of a different team, but it is the same team, the same core, the same standards.
Right.
Um, yeah, so I'm excited to go out there and play with Isaiah Glasgow and Jack Kelly again.
I
You
mean,
know what I
those
mean?
dudes are dogs too. Like that linebacker core was so. I was like, dude, I feel like bad for the other offenses because I was like, man, like either one of those dudes that they're gonna meet is not gonna be fun. Like that's not gonna be a fun, pleasant like out in the flats. Like, and you see one of those dudes, or if you're up the like, you're not meeting a nice linebacker, which
Y-
is kind of that's usually surprising. Usually there's like one or two guys that you're like, okay, like gotta avoid. You can't avoid like anyone on that
You're getting
defensive side. You're
stuck. Yeah.
getting absolutely crushed, and no, I'm excited, man. And then new coming over from Utah. That's a big get, in the D
Yeah.
line, and it's gonna be awesome to watch him. And like I'm super excited for y'all and what you guys are gonna do post that. But I mean, how is like playing at that level and playing those types of games? I was at the ASU game. That was brutal. That game was crazy. Um, Mostly the fans were crazy. Like, like there's a lot of like rumors like, oh, BYU fans suck and this and that. But I was like, man, like ASU, like I just walked in there and I was hated. Like just walking in the
Oh
stadium, it was
yeah.
awful. I mean, how much of that, like, obviously basketball, they're kind of on top of you in the student section and things like that. Football, it's a little bit further.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's probably more chippy between the players. Like, how is that kind of, is there a lot of trash talk? Is there not as much?
You can definitely tell how the teams are coached, just off of their standards and their
Yeah.
culture. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, from play to play, there is so much. You can even imagine all the trash talk that's going on in the Utah game.
Oh, I bet that. I mean, yeah, we do. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that game real fast, actually. How was that Utah game? You go up to Rice Eccles. They're obviously pissed. Like, I work with both sides with what I do in the car industry and stuff. And so, I have to keep it
Yeah,
cordial. But, like, you go up there and they're thinking like they're gonna blast you guys. They got Cam Rising, that right at that time early in the season
early
before he went
season.
out.
Yeah,
Right, it was this whole thing of like Utah's got all these guys. They're gonna absolutely dominate BYU in every way. And I was like, okay, well if you do your history lesson, like besides a couple games, like Utah hasn't blasted BYU. Like it's always like a
it's a true
one
rivalry
one
game.
one
Yeah,
possession game. Fluke things happen all the time for both sides. Like I'm like, dude, it's gonna be a game.
yeah.
You're in that game. You're in that hostile environment. What was that game like?
It's unreal. I mean, you grew up in Utah. That
Right.
is the game that everybody's like. In elementary school, you're talking back to your friends like, "Oh, they're gonna get him this year." Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, that game was one of the most physical games I've ever played. Um, but one of the most fun games I've ever played just because I know people up on that team and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Valley's split, but you know people in red.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching that game. Um, crazy game. Speechless type game, you know what I mean?
So I mean, just powerful experience, right? Like it's like like that's one of those juggernaut games that it's just like, yeah, you are getting the best of the best every play. You're getting the absolute shit rocked out of you, like both offense and defense, just going hard. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just unreal, and so. y'all got the win. And you guys get to bring them back to Provo this year, which will be unreal. And you're gonna go against Coach Prime this year too in Colorado. I mean, that's kind of. Is there games that you guys look forward to, or you personally look forward to that you're like, hey, I want to circle this game for different reasons, or do you kind of just say, hey, who I play next week is who I play, and it's kind
I
of the extent of that,
I take it game by game, honestly. Like whoever I play next week's who I play, and I'm going to study for that game. Obviously, there's a huge circle around the Utah game.
right? I mean, you kind of have
You,
to.
you have to. You
You
know what I
have to
mean?
circle that one a couple times,
Yeah.
right? But
Um,
I mean, yeah, I mean that's super cool that you're able to lock that in and focus on that. But I guess just to wrap it up, obviously I feel like we got to know you a lot and got to know some insights that a lot of people probably don't know and experience. But as far as like kind of been connected and why I started been connected as a brand and then with a podcast behind the brand is just connections and networking and creating relationships that last longer than either a sport or a job or whatever it is, right? Like you can connect to people and you can network and it can change your life and your course, right? You talked
yeah.
about being in Oregon, the type of connections you had there, and now being at BYU with the connections you have there. How have you seen connections and networking be of value to you and what you're doing?
Connections are everything in life. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
whether you have good connections or bad connections, it can make or break your career.
absolutely.
Um, so yeah, just keeping a level headed and not taking everything too seriously and enjoying everybody around you and connecting with everybody on a personal level is huge. So
I love it, man.
yeah,
Well, dude, I appreciate you taking some time during your off like well not really off season because it's college sports, so you're 24/7.
yeah.
You're in
Spring
you're in
ball.
season. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're in it, man. So I appreciate you taking your time to come meet with us and hop on set and make sure you're following our guy on Instagram and his social media platforms and absolutely tune in for this year because it's gonna be a movie. I'm super excited. Can't wait to have you there. My little brother-in-law is actually coming back from his mission. He'll be there in 5 weeks, which will be dope to be there even more, watching you guys do
yeah,
your
that'd be
thing,
cool.
and it's gonna be fun. And so I'm super excited to see y'all ball out. And bro, again, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was
All right,
fun.
man.